And the other way that we can misunderstand it is that it's a worthless exercise. But I think that it serves as a wake-up call. It serves as an inspirational reorientation of recognizing the magnitude of the need. In fact, as a preacher, I kind of equate it to the idea of a revival. You know, we go to church each week and we're told what we should be doing, and then occasionally we get together and say, no, we really need to think about this thing really seriously. We need to grab hold in a new way. And I think that this gives us an opportunity to grab hold in a new way, to recommit to making sure that we're doing everything that we can possibly do. And I'd like to thank all of you for putting forth the effort and the time and the energy to make that possible. So thank you very much, and I think we'd like to have some words of welcome from our mayor at this time.
Good afternoon to all of you. Let me begin by saying thank you for being here. I want to acknowledge one of my colleagues from the Board of County Commission. Commissioner Emily Bonilla is here. Not sure that I see Commissioner. All right. I'm not sure I see any of our other commissioners who are here. But I do want to take the opportunity to just talk a little bit before I get into giving some thanks to the work that you all have done collectively. I want to remind you that we are in one of the magic gymnasiums that exists here within Orange County. We're blessed with having a fantastic community entity and institution here in a professional sports team, the Orlando Magic. And some years ago now, when there was deliberation about using taxpayer dollars to invest in building a new arena, the Magic, through their corporate and community involvement, there was conversation about what could be done to benefit the entire community. And so it was believed that by the Magic investing in these types of facilities around the county, it would create the opportunity for children and youth to have a place to go, a positive place to go in their community, to not only learn about basketball, but also to engage in other community activities. It was also designed to be a place where we could have community meetings, where there was synergy between our professional sports team and our athletes and our county residents. And so I believe that this facility, like the others that you've had opportunity to visit, kind of has made a difference in our community. And so we look forward to continued partnerships with other corporations who come into our community, who want to be integrated in the community, also investing in our community in other ways and giving back to our community. So I do applaud the Orlando Magic for the great partnership that we have. Now, let me just say that when we started out back in November of last year, probably all of you who are participants on this task force had no idea what you were getting yourselves into. You had no idea the type of time, commitment, and the really thought leadership that will come from this body. But my style of leadership is to not impose my will on the electorate that I'm elected to represent, but to truly listen and go to the people and get their input. And then once we receive that input, to then devise strategies where we can execute the vision and the recommendations that comes forth from the collaborative of our community. And so let me just say thank you to the leaders of the task force, our two co-chairs, Pastor Kaufman and former County Commissioner Rod Love, for their leadership with this task force. The work that they have done has just been extraordinary. And then let me also thank all of you for your active participation. This is really just the beginning for us. As we began this work on November the 6th, 2020, Orange County had experienced 7 shootings involving children 17 and younger. 2 of these tragedies resulted in fatalities. 1 child was just 3 years old. We know that shootings have occurred since November the 6th, but with your work and the heightened awareness on this issue, I'm confident that we will begin to make the changes needed in our community. As I've said before, this work does not end with the recommendations that you will make. This work should outlive all of us. It is work that will evolve over time. But we are here today at the end of the 120 days, and I look forward to hearing the recommendations proposed to prevent and reduce gun violence and violent crime in our community. As I said in the beginning, we know that government and law enforcement cannot solve this problem alone. This is a community issue, and it takes a collaborative approach focusing on the 4 pillars to bring change in the short term and long term to address a long-standing problem. That is why each of you were selected. Again, I do applaud your service, and I say thank you from the bottom of my heart for your willingness to make this community the place that I was born and raised and have devoted the last 40 years of my life to public service on behalf of my children, my grandchildren who live in this community. Thank you for your willingness to make this a better place for them. Thank you for your willingness to make this community a better place for your children, your grandchildren. And for the other youth in this community, I say thank you on behalf of all of them as we try to reduce gun violence and violent crime in our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the co-chairs at this time, but I want to also let you know that we will take the recommendations presented today to the Board of County Commission meeting on Tuesday, April the 13th, 2021. At that time, the co-chairs will make their presentation to the board, and we will begin the process of trying to institutionalize the recommendations to the extent that we have the control over the outcomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Demings. And I'd like to do the roll call at this time. And there are several who are on WebEx. And so if those of you who are on WebEx can speak up as well, I will read your names, and please say here or present. Rachel Allen. Yeah. Rolando Bailey. Patricia Brigham. Charles Brown. Lisa Coffey.
Present.
Ruth Sedeno. Mimi Chan.
Present.
Kelvin Cabarrus.
Present.
Jonathan Cox. Fernando Cuevas. TJ Legacy Cole. I believe he's on WebEx. Eric Dubose.
Present.
Lisa Early. Terrence Gray.
Rolando Bailey, present.
Roger Handberg.
Present.
Adam Hartnett.
Here.
Corey Austin Jackson. Subhash Katil. Samantha Love. Ricky Lee.
Present.
Derek McCrae.
Present.
TJ's present.
Thanks, TJ. Chief Mike McKinley.
Jerome Miller on behalf of Chief Mike McKinley.
Thank you. Honorable John Mina.
I'm here.
Miles Mulrain Jr.
Present.
Maisha Murray. Nancy Ush,
Present.
Javier Andres Pinero,
Present.
Chief Orlando Rolon,
Captain Rich Lane, standing in for Chief Ramon.
Patricia
Present.
Rump, Ruben Saldana, Gabriel Salguero, Michael Scott,
Present.
and the Honorable Monique Worrell.
Present.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Co-Chair. The draft minutes of the February 10th Task Force meeting have been provided to the members for review. Are there any changes to the minutes? If there's no changes, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. With all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those in opposition, please say by the same sign. Thank you. The minutes have been approved. As listed in your agenda as well, we have we need the approval of the minutes from the subcommittee meetings for intervention, prosecution, the members' meeting on cash bail, PTR, and bond enforcement and prevention. I'd like a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing all of that, the minutes are approved. Okay, do we have public comment?
We'll ask the representative from the county if we have public comment at this point.
Thank you, Co-Chair Coffin. We do not have any public comment that was submitted online or anyone present at today's meeting that would like to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to be having presentations from the various subcommittees, and so we do not want to have the report read in its entirety. That will take too much time, but we would ask the subcommittee leaders to summarize and to point out the highlights, and there will be 10 minutes allowed for each presentation. And so at this time we're going to have Lisa Early presenting on behalf of the Prevention Subcommittee. And it's already been mentioned, but I think it's worth mentioning again that there have been 52 meetings, and these meetings have been 2 hours each. And then when you think of travel time, it gives a little bit of an idea of the amount of investment that has been made by this group. So, Lisa, we would ask you to present from the Prevention Subcommittee.
Many thanks, and thanks to everybody, and thanks to my subcommittee members as well, who I would like to thank right now and give a shout out to their names. You see them up on the screen. Ruth Cedeno, Mimi Chan, Lisa Coffey, Eric DuBose, TJ Legacy Cole, Maisha Murray, Javier Andres Pinheiro, and Andres Toro, and my co-chair, Reverend Salguero, and a special shout out to Adam Harnett, who is on, I believe, the intervention committee, but came to all of our meetings and contributed immensely to our work. So thank you to everybody. This was a work of love and a lot of work, and thanks to the co-chairs who came to every meeting as well and really gave amazing input and helped make this happen. So I'm going to go to the first slide. Okay, here I'm going to mess it up again, of course. Okay, what do I do to move my slide? Okay, we're up there. So, our focus. So we decided to focus on youth primarily between the ages of 13 and 25, residing in zip codes where the incidence of violent crime is the highest in Orange County, And we came up with 7 major recommendations. I'm going to tell you what those were, and then we'll do a slightly deep dive into each one of them. First, use a racial equity lens and trauma-informed approach to implement all task force recommendations. Second, expand/enhance access to effective youth and parenting, mental and behavioral health programs in the target zip codes. Next, transform the criminal justice system to reduce disproportionate arrests and incarceration of Black youth. Number 4, support economic development, reduce poverty, and address family economic insecurity in the target zip codes. Next slide. And oopsie, I'm going the wrong way, aren't I? Okay. All right, I'm going to need some technical assistance here. Wait, I think I got it now. Okay, I think I'm good. Okay. Thanks, Carol. If you can go back one slide to the previous. There you go. Okay, the next 3 recommendations: reduce access to illegal firearms. Number 6, develop and implement a comprehensive plan to improve neighborhood livability in the target zip codes. And lastly, communicate key issues and programs to the community. And these recommendations are actually in our order of priority. So let's move to the first one. Next slide. And that first recommendation specifically is to use a racial equity lens and trauma-informed approach to implement all safety task force recommendations. And what I will say is we also use both of those lenses in coming up with our recommendations. And to give you a little bit of context into that, I'm going to read verbatim, actually, the language from our report. The Prevention Committee employed a racial equity lens as part of its analysis and recommends the county continue to do so as it implements our recommendations in the months and years ahead. We considered the impact of the nation's long legacy of racist policies, such as Jim Crow laws, the 1934 National Housing Act, the 1935 Social Security Act, subprime loans, the war on drugs, voting restrictions, employment discrimination, and more, much of which is still in place today. These policies created and have sustained a racial wealth gap predominantly confined to low-income communities of color, as well as disproportionate incarceration rates. And then as it pertains specifically to trauma, we stated poverty, racism, and incarceration each individually create trauma for those who experience them. When one is exposed to prolonged trauma or toxic stress, it creates negative outcomes for that individual and their family. So as I said, we employed that lens in all of our conversations and our recommendations, and we encourage the county to employ that same lens as it moves forward in implementing recommendations. You can go to the next slide, Carol. Thank you. So our next recommendation, number 2, is to expand/enhance access to effective youth and parenting, mental, and behavioral health programs. And to get a little bit more specific, and I won't go into too much specificity here, but we encourage allocating funding to programs operated by credible messengers in the target zip codes. And our report does list, I believe it's 8 or 9 target zip codes that were identified in a study the county did a few years ago as areas where youth are most at risk. So we specifically name those zip codes, and we're encouraging allocating funding specifically to those zip codes. And when we talk about credible messengers, we're talking about programs that connect youth to pro-social caring individuals on an ongoing basis. Known as Positive Youth Development, these programs offer youth mentorship, conflict resolution skill building, life skills training, jobs and job skill training, and support for academic success. And credible messengers are really those small individuals and entities on the ground in the neighborhoods. They're not the big, very robust organizations, but rather the ones in the neighborhood that have a long legacy of working effectively with youth in those neighborhoods. And because they're small and some of them don't even have nonprofit status yet, but they're doing the work, we also recommend investing in systems of technical support and capacity building to enhance the nonprofit infrastructure of these small on-the-ground organizations and individuals, again, in the target zip codes. We also recommend allocating funding to implement research-based models in the target zip codes proven to prevent violent crime, and our report does include some good examples of those. We pulled from some national research on what are evidence-based models, and we specifically name the kinds of things that evidence has shown prevent crime in youth, and also we named some of the ones that research shows don't work. So we provide that information. You can go to the next slide. We also specifically recommend investing in an effective system of behavioral and mental health / trauma-informed service for at-promise youth, again, in the target zip codes, including build the capacity of youth-serving organizations to offer trauma-informed services. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about trauma. We also recommend developing and implementing a system that provides free transportation to programs and back home at the end of the day for youth who reside in the target zip codes in order to improve access to programs during after-school hours and on the weekends. And then you can go to the next slide. Our next recommendation, we had a lot of debate about how the county currently allocates funds to nonprofits, and we make several recommendations in our report. The ones I'll point out here are more effectively publicizing the opportunity to serve on the panel, particularly to residents of the target zip code, so we get more of their voice on the panel and in the decision-making process regarding allocation of funds, and to specifically include youth representatives on the panel. And we also recommend adding violence prevention as a citizens review panel focus area for funding. And then the next recommendation is to invest in programs that teach life skills to parents and youth and make it available in multiple formats, even on-demand, online, YouTube kind of formats, so that families can more easily access those programs. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And we are on recommendation number 3 now. So, this recommendation relates to transforming the criminal justice system to reduce disproportionate arrests and incarceration of black youth. And to give you a little bit of context here, we did a deep dive look at data, and according to the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, even though black youth make up 24.7% of the population of Orange County, they comprise 60.9% of arrested youth in Orange County. We also did a deep dive look at the reasons for arrest, and we found that the vast majority of the arrests were for minor crimes, and the most common reasons were not following rules imposed by the court system. Specifically, 42% of the reasons for arrest were for violation of probation and failure to appear in court. And then the next largest were for minor violations like resisting without violence, drug paraphernalia possession, criminal mischief, loitering, school disruption, disorderly conduct, and petty theft. So we specifically are recommending changes in how local law enforcement deals with low-level crimes. Dang.
Please summarize in 1 minute.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate. And that includes coming up with strategies to reduce the disproportionate arrest and incarceration of youth in the target zip codes, especially for low-level offenses, and analyze data on which officers are making a lot of these arrests in the target zip codes for low-level offenses, and addressing that, including removing problematic deputies from the target zip codes. We also recommend looking at the entire justice system, not just arrests, but going into after arrests are made, including eliminating cash bail for county-level offenses and relying instead on a presumption of release that would require the prosecutor to prove that the accused person shows a clear risk of harming themselves or someone else or is at risk of fleeing. I'm going to move on to the next slide. We made recommendations about improving overall neighborhood conditions, about investing specifically in improving conditions in the target zip codes, and the kinds of things we're talking about are adding tree cover or other plants, doing more debris cleanup, reducing the number of abandoned buildings, increasing street lining. And the last one, number 7, communicating key issues and programs to the community. And that's it.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
It is my pleasure to introduce the co-chair of the Intervention Subcommittee, and that is Bishop Kevin Cabarrus. You're recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, Co-Chair Love, Co-Chair Coffin. Again, I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this opportunity to serve on this very distinguished task force, and thank you for your visionary leadership in leading the efforts to bring our minds together to bring forth such great recommendations. And to our co-chairs, Love and Coffin, we appreciate you for your labor of love, for attending every meeting and sharing your input and guiding us through this process. We thank you. I present recommendations today on behalf of the Intervention Subcommittee, whom I proudly served with brilliant minds over these last 90 days. And I would like to highlight the members of the subcommittee. Our co-chair, fellow co-chair, Samantha Love, who's not present with us, she's on WebEx. Our members are Rachel Allen, Rolando Bailey, Charles Brown, Corey Austin Jackson, Miles Moraine Jr., and Ruben Saldana. Our recommendations are as follows. Our focus was to promote interagency cooperation and coordination among service providers in Orange County to assist reducing gun violence and violent crimes pertaining to youth. Our goal was to identify program models that will redirect the unlawful activities of youthful offenders that present a significant risk to our community. Our recommendations are as follows. Recommendation number 1, develop a detailed plan that addresses generations of neglect and poverty by formulating a 10-year vision with a systemic focus that reviews the structural changes that provides a healthy community where everyone thrives. We note that while this 120 days was given to us to give recommendations, it is important to note that the plan of change will take more than 120 days, but we believe that a whole outline of a 10-year vision moving forward, as Mayor Demmons alluded to on many different occasions, that we expand and continue to plan even beyond his administration and our service to these various task forces. That's recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2 is to increase the use of grassroots organizations in the community and allocate funding. We have all echoed the sentiments that there are various grassroots organizations that are critical, and as they are most familiar and vested within the community. However, there are so many of them that right now are not funded and have not been eligible to get funding, and it is our contention that a recommendation suggests that we need to look at our grassroots programs and put the funds where the work is being done. Recommendation number 3, develop a neighborhood accountability board and increase the use of diversion services. We're to partner with schools and the community to highlight youth and young adults to address violence within their community, and it is important to include youth in the community that are a positive influence, and the use of diversion programs help to eliminate youth from having a criminal record. Recommendation number 4, to define, develop, and fund a Credible Messengers program. According to the Credible Messengers Justice Center, a credible messenger is a mentor that has been involved in the justice system and has now changed their life. And as they create trust and form relationships, young people are provided a positive example on how to be successful in society, coming from a person who has obviously walked or experienced what they are facing or experiencing now presently. Recommendation number 5, to coordinate with the mental health providers to increase the number of providers in the areas identified and require the agencies to increase their hours of operation. To provide more mental health services in these high-risk zip codes, it is crucial to have these services provided during varied hours so that the community can access them according to their needs. And it's our further contention that these mental health services are not to be limited to just juveniles, but they should be targeted toward the entire family's rehabilitation. Recommendation number 6. Provide safe and reliable areas for youth to congregate. Open up community centers to the community. Currently, the community centers cannot be used by anyone that does not meet the background requirements. These limitations are placing hardships on where positive and productive events can take place. This can include smaller agencies, subcontracting with larger agencies to provide a more specific service. And our final recommendation is to create a realistic channel for communication with the community and the youth. Social media, billboards, and the radio provide different avenues to communicate with the community about available services, events, and opportunities in the community. Mayor Demings, I end and conclude my comments by saying this. As you have stated, the reason why we are here is because there were a number of violent crimes and murders that took place in our community prior to this task force being formulated. While this task force has been convening, we've had a number of shootings, a number of individuals' lives being taken. Just as recently as a few days ago, a 21-year-old who just celebrated his 21st birthday, life was taken, gunned down after being bailed out of jail. And as you heard his mother say on the media, that even she was not surprised that it happened. This calls our attention to the urgency of this matter, and I believe that every person in this room is quite passionate and has put in the work and have lended your brilliant minds and your ideals around how we can work together to make recommendations to change our community. I would like to further challenge, even beyond not just our mayor and our board of county commissioners, but even us task force members, just because the task force time that the mayor has provided has come to an end, does not mean that our discussions and our work should conclude. I believe that we still should collectively work together, get together, and put our minds together around different ones of these initiatives. That while the County Board of Commissioners and the mayor is working to implement changes in policies and to provide financial support to some of the recommendations, we too can also work together to do what we need to do to get some things moving in our community right now. I cannot say enough in this room that your time here today and your time spent in the days to come will save the life of a young person, will heal and help to rehabilitate a family that is broken, and will offer hope to a community at large in Orange County that we all love, that is a great place to live. And we're not going to allow these enemies, oppositions of violence and gun violence and all types of evil to disturb us from the opportunity from having the pursuit of happiness and the public safety and the peace and harmony that we should have in living amongst one another. So I am urging Mr. Mayor and our county commissioner that is here, that our recommendations, and I believe the Prevention Committee has really outlined some very good things as well, and others that will be mentioned today, that please hear us today and please put the support behind what is being stated here today. Please support these grassroots organizations who might not have the name, who might not have the credibility as some that are named in our community for years. But I can assure you, while working with shoulder to shoulder with many of them in this community, they are doing the work. And if they have the resources, the work that they're doing will only expand more. And as a result of that expansion, it will save lives and make Orange County a better place to live. It has been my pleasure to serve on this task force. My service does not end today. I am going to continue to keep my ears and my eyes on everything going on in this community, and I will lend my voice and my influence to make sure that everything that needs to change, that it change, so that together we can all make a difference and be the change that we want to see. God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair.
Yes, again, thank you, Co-Chair Cabarrus. And See, I told them it was like a revival, and you've just demonstrated it for us. So thank you very much. We'd like to welcome the co-chair of the Enforcement Committee, subcommittee at this time, Patricia Rump. And the co-chair, as I mentioned last month, is a little bit of a misnomer because her co-chair was unable to serve with her, and she has continued on her own. So thank you so much. But when I say on her own, there was the whole subcommittee there. So thank you very much, Patricia.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's always difficult to come behind a preacher, but I'm going to do my best to come behind a preacher, a bishop at that. I need to pick this microphone up. I do have a little height on me, so thank you. But first of all, I want to say welcome to Pine Hills. This is the Pine Hills community. You can see that we are more than just a community. I'm going to echo what someone says, more than just a community to pass through, but we are a community to stop and visit. So thank you for having us in the Pine Hills community. According to, was there, and Chef Mina absence, Chief McKinney of Apopka, Deputy Miller of Apopka. We had Chief Rolando of Orlando Police Department. Captain Lane is there. We had a visitor from the Chief of Belle Isles sub-community. We had Dr. Nancy Ash there. Ricky Lee was there, and other ones was part of the committee. So thank you for being a part there, and Commissioner Love and Pastor Coffin. But the Law Enforcement Committee task was to enforce. Our effort was focused on identifying enforcement strategies consisting of best practice to reduce violence and gun violence in Orange County. The subcommittee elicit data and statistics from various sources, review articles encompassing evidence-based practices, and listen to several subject matter experts who provided substantive information to assist in making our recommendation. And through all our meetings, we came up with 4 best practices recommendation. And the recommendation number 1 was to establish and maintain a quarterly scheduled community public safety forum between enforcement and community stakeholders over the next 12 months to review relevant data, solicit community input, and discuss and develop strategies to reduce gun and violent crime. When we say community stakeholders, we are talking about, but not limited to, different groups of community stakeholders. And they could be our nonprofit organizations, our residents. They could also be profit or nonprofit organizations, businesses, media, corporations, house of worship, civic organization, government, public school, public health. These are just a few of the community stakeholders that we're talking about when we say in recommendation number 1 to hold a quarterly community meetings. And the context around us holding these quarterly meetings the intent is to implement the public safety forums with community-based organizations and council, along with law enforcement within their respective jurisdiction, in an effort to continuously build community trust to prevent and solve gun violence in the community. So we're looking forward to hold those quarterly meetings with the community stakeholders and law enforcement in their respective jurisdictions to continue to build trust with the community. Our second recommendation is to increase the community and law enforcement use of evidence-based practice and non-traditional approaches to community policing, and engage to further build public trust in the community. Historically distrustful in law enforcement and disproportionately impacted by gun violence. A lot of these recommendations we would say increase and continue because we know that law enforcement is doing these things, but I've heard said earlier, any organization want to continue to evolve. So as we continue to involve in law enforcement, we want to continue to do best practice in our work. So by holding these, doing these best practice community policing, this would also continue to build trust with our community and law enforcement. Recommendation number 3 is to implement public safety workshop with law enforcement agency and community stakeholders through an independent third-party facilitator. I know this may sound closer to recommendation number 1, where we said a forum, but this recommendation number 3, where we said a workshop, this would be more of a small group type workshop. This would allow the community to understand the role of law enforcement. It would also give law enforcement an opportunity to understand the citizens in that community. It would be more of a training and understanding and working together. And by doing this, this will also help build the community trust with the community and law enforcement. And when we said a third-party organization, we're looking for someone, an independent person or an agency or an organization to come in and facilitate the training with law enforcement in the community on these small type of workshop and training that we may understand each other's role in the community to help us better connect in the community. Our fourth recommendation is to increase community awareness of Orange County Sheriff's Office, Behavior Response Unit, and Orlando Police Department Community Response Team mental health program that provide a joint response to a call that involve mental health crisis. And we recommend this because there have been incidents where there may be someone in a mental health crisis that's not deemed to be incarcerated at that time. And there's opportunity for law enforcement, an alternative to incarcerating someone, but give them that mental health attention that they need, and they follow that case to help them transition better in society as opposed to being incarcerated if it doesn't need to be incarcerated. So we want to support what Orange County Sheriff Department is already doing, and what the Orlando Police Department is already doing, is working collaboratively with mental health when on calls that's going out into the community. And those are our 4 recommendations. We're looking for ambassadors to help us facilitate these community forums. We're looking for ambassadors. And so we came up with the determination for how do we define a community ambassador. And a community ambassador is a community ambassador organization actively engage the community and takes the lead role in creating and maintaining accurate information that assist in achieving the goals of reducing gun violence. A community ambassador is someone who advocates on the behalf of law enforcement and someone who advocates on the behalf of the community. So we're looking for someone who could understand both sides of what the law enforcement side of it is and what the community side of it is. And when we said a third-party facilitator, as far as our workshop and training, that third-party facilitator is someone, as a person or company or organization that assists in providing meaningful connection and cooperation between law enforcement and the community. The intent of the facilitator is to strengthen the relationship between law enforcement and the community that serves, especially communities that have a historical fear and distrust of the community. I want to thank you for this opportunity, Mayor, for serving on this community. Thank you, Commissioner Love and Pastor Coffin. Thank you for the law enforcement community for standing with us today. Thank you for everyone who has participated in this event and this law enforcement task force. We want to keep going. Thank you again for this opportunity.
And thank you, Co-Chair Rumpf, for your great leadership. We appreciate it greatly.
I'll put this back for the next speaker.
At this time, I would like to have the co-chair of the prosecution subcommittee, and that is Co-Chair Brigham, and I would also like to recognize her co-chair on that subcommittee is Bishop Derek McCray.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. I'd first like to thank Mayor Demings for putting this citizen task force together and for the appointment to it. It's been a great honor to serve. I'd like to thank our co-chairs, Co-Chair Love and Co-Chair Coffin, for attending each and every one of the subcommittee meetings and for your incredible guidance. Thank you. We had a wonderful group of people working together and bonding throughout the time of our prosecution subcommittee meetings. Thank you to Co-Chair Bishop McCray for imparting your wisdom and knowledge and your on-the-ground experience. Thank you to Professor Jonathan Cox, to U.S. Attorney Roger Handberg for providing us with some innovative ways to enhance prosecution, to Adam Harnett for your passion to prevent gun violence, to Subhash Katil, to Michael Scott for providing us with the inspiration for youth diversion programs, and to the State Attorney, Madam Monique Laurel. Thank you so much. The goal that the prosecution subcommittee was charged with was a difficult one. We found ourselves, and I think that's because everyone in this room, our nature is to try to prevent and not necessarily prosecute, other than the prosecutors in the room, perhaps. So a special thanks to Co-Chair Love, who reminded us against mission creep when we would tend to want to find ways to provide solutions that would be preventative. But I think what we have come up with are two recommendations that are very positive and innovative and ways to enhance prosecution methods. Our objectives were to educate the community on the role of the courts and prosecutors, to increase effectiveness on gun violence and violent crime prosecution, identify strategies to build community trust and confidence, and develop strategies to educate law enforcement and the community on existing safety allowances for victims. This also gives me the opportunity to thank the law enforcement officers and members of the judiciary who came to talk with us and answer our many, many questions. After discussing a number of the themes that you can see on the next slide, we knew that we had to narrow our recommendations down to two. The first recommendation would be the implementation of geographic steward programs in the community. Now, I'd like to thank U.S. Attorney Handberg for bringing this idea forward. As we have seen, that it is common for police to get involved with communities and to get to know the members of those communities and to play a role and to form trusted relationships, and that is a word that came up continually throughout our meetings, was the word trust. So the idea of prosecutorial stewards, these prosecutors would be assigned to troubled communities. Some may live near or in these communities, and they would be charged with getting to know the members of the community, work with law enforcement on cases that were more serious than others, work with community organizations, work with troubled youth. This would be a way to form relationships and form trusts with attorneys who don't generally get involved on the ground at that level, and would be a way, it is our hope, that would enhance prosecution standards and also have a way of taking a serious look at whether something should be prosecuted or there could be another resolution. That leads to recommendation number 2, which is the implementation of civil citation diversion programs. I would like to thank Jonathan Scott for his incredible work on this. This would require a collaboration with the 9th Judicial Circuit State Attorney's Office, the Orange County Sheriff's Office, each municipal police department within Orange County, and key stakeholders. A committee would be formed to develop, implement, and oversee the civil citation diversion program. This would be initiated by law enforcement, issuing civil citations at the initial point of contact. This is a very hopeful way of holding offenders accountable without necessarily arresting them or putting them in jail. We know that actions have consequences, but consequences don't always have to wind up in court. There are other ways. There's community service, there's written letters of apology, there are other ways to deal with troubled youth to try to steer them away from a life of crime. So this would be very reflective of what the Citizen Safety Task Force is. intersectional. It would involve law enforcement, attorneys, community leaders, community organizations, family members, parents, and young people to work together on solutions to reducing crime and to turning our young people away from pursuing a life of crime. And we believe that the civil citations are an effective method of doing so. We would suggest timetables for both of these recommendations. The first one, 6 months, would pass, and then we would reassess, or we recommend a reassessment of that program. And on this civil citation program, you would have different intervals where certain goals would be met and reassessment would be required. Also, we are recommending that law enforcement who directly issue these civil citations would receive special training about them. And I'd also like to add that we did our work with the lens of knowing that we have a problem in every neighborhood around the country with systemic racism. So we kept that in mind throughout all of our discussions, and we believe that these recommendations are promising and positive and hold incredible potential for healing in our communities. And before I close, I just want to say again that it has been a true honor to serve on this committee. I grew up in Pine Hills, and coming back here to give my input to try to make a difference has been a wonderful experience and something I will treasure. So I thank again the mayor, co-chairs Love and Coffin, and all of the members of the prosecution subcommittee and co-chair McCrae for your time and incredible work. It will be something I will never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Brigham. At this time, we set aside approximately 45 minutes so that each member of this task force would be allotted at least 2 minutes as we go around the room to provide your comments or your thoughts about this process. So at this time, what we'd like to do is engage the entire task force, and I would like to start out to my right to our task force member, Allen. You're recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner Love, and thank you to everyone. It has been an honor to serve on this committee, and I admire the work that's coming out of it. This idea of moving toward a new vision for how we treat each other in our community based on the science and based on what we know about human development. So this statement is here, a vision for our community. I think so many of the recommendations align with this, becoming a trauma-informed community, a resilient community, where we can start right with young children and families and grow into the community we wish to become. So I appreciate people looking at this vision for our community and considering it, and trusting that we are prepared to act on it with hundreds of professionals and organizations already doing this work and moving us toward a community that's less about punishment and more about connection and community. Thank you.
Just to be a little more even-handed, we're going to go back and forth. So we started with A, and now we're going to go to W. And so someone from the either State's Attorney Worrell or someone else from the Attorney's Office, we'd like to have your input at this time.
Thank you, Co-Chair Coffin. Well, it was an honor to serve as a member of the Prosecution Subcommittee and on this task force for the first 60 days of my term as State Attorney. It has truly been enlightening to hear the voice of different community members as to what they see as important, and has helped me to further direct my focus as the State Attorney for this community. We have made strides towards increasing the resources that we put into gun violence in the State Attorney's Office, in addition to following the recommendations that the subcommittee has come up with how the state attorney's office can be more impactful in the community. It really was a wonderful thing just to hear the different voices of the members of the community and see those things that are important and collaborate to work towards building stronger, safer communities. I look forward to working with each and every one of these community members as we build a stronger, safer community going forward. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Task Force Member Father Charles Brown.
First of all, I would like to say thank you to the Honorable Mayor Jerry Demings for inviting me to be a part of this meeting and to salute you for your courage to seek solution for these long-standing systemic problems. It's easy to kick the can down the road, but you're not one of those type of people to kick the can down the road. In fact, for your compassion and your impassion and how you got us all motivated to do this task. And so I also want to thank for you allowing the Bridges International to be a participant of the solution and not just part of the problem. I believe that the community who should be benefactors of our efforts here would really have an understanding of the real changes that we are designed to do here. And when I sat in the church and listened to the community, it broke my heart to hear the community as they cried out for help from us to do some things that challenge us to do some things that have never been done before. And so I know that in some cases we have, but I think this time the sustainability is probably going to be the difference in terms of making a difference in the lives of the people that we are serving here. And then a special thank you to Bishop Sabaris for his leadership in our committee, the Intervention Committee, where he kept us focused and on task, and so we didn't deviate from the main, keeping the main thing the main thing. And so I just want to I'm so happy about this journey that we have embarked upon, and I believe that the task is still ahead. Thank you.
I just mentioned that we will hear from everyone who is present physically here, and then we will go to WebEx to listen to the comments from those on WebEx. So next I'd like to invite Ruben Saldana to share with us.
Coach Ruben Saldana. At 16 years old here in Orange County, I was already the gang leader of what became the biggest gang in Orange County, including we had a chapter out here in Pine Hills. We were based in the east side Orlando, Oak Ridge and OBT. I ended up doing 2 decades in prison, actually 19 years shy of 1 year of 2 decades. I'm 45 years old now. I haven't been arrested, I think, in 27 years. I am, according to what I know, the only certified credible messenger in this room. However, I do recognize that there are several credible messengers in this room who have the credibility, just like I do, to go out and teach youth crime prevention. I want to say that I wasn't one of the 300 applicants to try to get on this table. I want to thank the person who had faith in me, who had faith in my demonstration of change, who knows the community that I do on the streets without funding, though I've cried for help from every angle, but we continue to do the work, who didn't shy away and said, Coach, I'm not qualified for that topic, but I know you are. Miss Emily Bonilla, I want to thank her publicly for entrusting me, and I want to tell you that though this committee at large didn't hear my mouth almost at all, my subcommittee did, and they were very receptive, and I didn't miss a single, not one meeting. And the same devotion that I put to this task force is the same devotion that I wish everybody would give credible messengers a chance just like you, not just used as volunteers, a chance to do what we're already doing. And when this task force ends today, I'm very available. It's right here, social media, same name, or go look up my record. It's available over there as well. Find me, use me to help do this work and continue to youth crime prevention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you, Coach. I'd like to recognize Chair Brigham.
Thank you very much. Once again, I do thank Mr. Mayor for organizing this Citizens Task Force and co-chairs Love and Coffin. I think that one of the things that has made this Citizens Task Force so special and unique is its intersectionality. I truly believe that if we are going to solve community problems, we have to do so with all of us coming together from all walks of life: law enforcement, teachers, healers, lawyers, elected officials. The answer lies within a village, a team, not just one person. And I think that this Citizen Safety Task Force has given us a very positive example of that. I hope that we will all continue to work for solutions, and that the solutions or the possible hope-for solutions that we've recommended will be adopted by the Orange County Commission. And I assure you that I will continue to work on these issues, on gun violence prevention, and I get the feeling that all of you will too, which is very heartening. So thank you again very much.
Thank you.
And now we'll hear from co-chair Patricia Rump.
Again, thank you for this opportunity to share. I just want to say I'm just excited and thrilled and pleased to be a part of this group of talented group of organizations and talented people. I've learned a lot from being a part of this task force. I've retired from law enforcement after serving in law enforcement over 30 years. But I tell you, sitting with other law enforcement, with other agencies, I learned more in a short period of time, I think, that I have been in law enforcement for 30 years. Believe me, we have some incredible law enforcement on the streets. Not only do they wear a badge of law enforcement, but they also show the human side. They really care about the community that they serve. And that's what I learned in sitting with law enforcement under other than what I have worked with. They care about what they're doing. And I know you as a community residents here, you also care about what you're doing. Other than that, you would not have be here. It was so funny, just briefly, when the mayor first mentioned this task force at one of the community meetings, I sat in the back of the church, and I said, I am not going to volunteer. I'm not going to sign up for this committee. And weeks passed, and I received a text message, an email, not from the mayor, but from someone else, and asked me to serve on this committee. It took me several days to make a commitment, but I am so glad that I did. I'm so glad that someone saw something in me that I may be able to give some input in this organization and this task force. Again, I'm excited. Welcome to Pine Hills. Let's do this together, not just for Pine Hills, but for Orange County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Task Force Member Ruth Adanya.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank everybody to be. It's an honor for me and I'm blessed to be part of this meeting. I just hope we continue to grow together as a community, and I'll be always open for my community. So thank you so much.
And now Captain Rich Lane.
Yes, I personally and Orlando Police Department would like to thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say sincerely, I have met friends in the community I never would have met before, extended my network. When I need something, I can now reach out, and my network is much broader. But I'd also like to echo what Bishop Cabrera said, what was so important, and this would motivate every member of this committee to understand how important this is. 2 days ago, the case he was mentioning, the person bonded out of jail, and within 11 hours, they were targeted, and the city of Orlando, unfortunately, had another loss of life. That should stress to every member that we may not make the difference today right now, but these are many very good long-term approaches to curing this problem that we have in these neighborhoods. And I thank everybody who has put in the time and the effort to what I see can be very fruitful at the end of all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. I'd like to recognize Task Force Member Mimi Chan.
Thank you. I echo all the other members here when I say thank you for inviting me to serve on this task force to prevent violent crime in the community. It has been a privilege to get to know and learn from everyone here, but in particular, my fellow Prevention Committee members who I've learned such a great deal from, and I really appreciate the opportunity to have worked with such a diverse task force that has done both meaningful and hard work that I am both proud and passionate about. So thank you very much.
And now Nancy Osh.
Well, I became involved in this task force through Bishop Cabarrus. He had a meeting at his church, and it was open to the public, so I came because I think it was called Enough is Enough, and I was very interested in that. And so I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank Carol Burkett, the co-chairs, and everyone who participated in this task force. From day one, I've said the answer to our issues in this community, and in all communities, in my opinion, is community policing. And I'll say it again, community policing involves collaborative partnerships between law enforcement agencies and individuals and organizations they serve to develop solutions and increase trust in the police. It involves three key components: community partnerships, organizational transformation, and problem solving. This is what all of us have been engaged in for the past 120 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Task Force Member Lisa Coffey.
Good afternoon. I just want to echo what others have said about how it has been just an honor to serve on this committee. It's very encouraging to me to see that we've developed several different recommendations that look at the problem of gun violence through a racial equity and trauma-informed lens. I have really enjoyed the opportunity to work alongside my prevention subcommittee task force members. We've had some tough conversations, but those tough conversations led to some really powerful recommendations that I'm very proud to have been a part of. I thank you to the county staff who've been super helpful with everything that we've done, to our co-chairs, and to you, Mayor. Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate in this task force.
Thank you. And Michael Scott.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor and co-chairs, for allowing me the opportunity to serve on this community. We've had some difficult conversations, and I think that just shows that everybody is dedicated to the change that we all want to see. I would ask everyone, as we walk away from this table and look at the implementation of the different recommendations, to remember that sometimes what people put out is not what other people receive. So make sure that you seek clarification and don't discount the message because you don't like the messenger. I think that's important. A lot of us are very passionate. A lot of us believe very deeply in the things that we're doing. And sometimes in those passions, we get frustrated. We get upset because we don't like the message, or maybe the way the message is being delivered, or maybe the words weren't the appropriate words. I would ask that, again, seek clarification. I've buried, too many kids. I spent too many years trying to fight for them not to end up in jail or prison or in a cemetery prematurely, and it hurts every single time. So just thank you for the opportunity, Mayor, and I look forward to the implementation of the recommendations and, more specifically, the results. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Co-Chair Bishop Cabarrus at this time.
Thank you again, Mayor Demmons. Hats off to you. We appreciate your leadership in every capacity that you served in this community. You have led and led well. And I think that we challenge our elected officials a lot of times, but when they do good, you should commend them publicly as well. And I appreciate you. And I also want to say to our Madam State Attorney coming into office and taking and accepting just challenge and hearing our passionate concerns, she listened. She opened her office, she opened her staff, she made herself available, and I want to honor and respect and appreciate her leadership for a job well done as far as she has been in office. So I thank you on behalf of myself, and I believe other community constituents feel the same way. And to Co-Chair Love and Co-Chair Coffin, thank you. I said plenty today, and oftentimes thank you, Mike Scott, for outlining what you said, because sometimes our passion can be misconstrued, and a lot of people tend to not like the messenger, and they ignore the message. But the message here today is that children are dying. 3-year-old, 14-year-old, 21-year-old, and it's happening every day. I would that everything that has been said in this room, that everyone would beyond today not just close your book and close your heart because the task force is over, but continue to do the work. It's not just the state attorney's problem. It's not just a law enforcement problem. This is our community. And I say to the community at large that are listening today that while you have challenged the task force and said that this is the last task force, and if they don't produce, then we're done away with task force, I have to push back and let you know, no, this problem that we have did not happen overnight. It won't be resolved overnight, and it's not resolved by pointing the finger at the mayor or the task force or any other powers that be. But the problem is resolved by us as a community working collectively together to resolve the issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop. At this time, Miles Mulrain, Jr.
Thank you so much. I stepped into the task force as my first experience being on the task force and getting a chance to be in something that you would consider a government move. I'm more of the grassroots, more of the industry, and we don't really get a lot of assistance. So being here, I'm hopeful that we can actually shed light on what needs to be changed. And just like Bishop Cabarrus said, like Coach Rubin said, even Michael Scott said, and even Monique Worrell said, this is a long battle. You know, I don't want us to just sit here and then after 121 days we go back to normal life and, you know, this isn't a concern because like we just said, there was a shooting just recently, a murder just recently. There's going to be more crime that takes place and people that's been on the ground like us are going to have to still find a way to come up with some kind of solution. You know, the only thing that I would ask is that we don't take time trying to implement these strategies, that we actually move as fast as possible. You know, a lot of stuff that's taken place since the task force started to right now, I think that if we had some of these ideas that we came up with, they wouldn't be taking place. And if we had these same things in place a couple of years ago, they wouldn't be taking place. And we still need more work on more things to be changed. So, you know, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to work, though. I'm happy to see that people are seeing that more people on the ground need to be at the table. And I think that the next task force, we need to see more diversity still, more people from the ground, more involvement from the community. Because, yes, we do need to have credible messages and people who represent the community, but we need the community involved, too, fully, if we really want to make a change.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Orange County Sheriff John Mina.
Good afternoon, and thank you. And again, thanks to our mayor, thanks to the co-chairs, and thanks to all the task force members and the very hard work that you have all put in. You know, I've been in law enforcement now today 30 years, been a resident of Orange County for over 30 years, and actually spent most of my time about a mile from here where I live. So I'm very passionate about this community, and I think it's easy to forget that law enforcement is a part of this community. So thank you for all your work. I do want to thank our new state attorney for her willingness to collaborate with law enforcement and And I think all of us need to remember, the reason that we were here, and it's been said a couple of times, Daquan Felix Jr., the other night, Demetrius Cox, young men in our community that were killed at the hands of other young men, much of it gang violence and targeted violence. So we need to not take our focus off of that. And we'd really like to see just a little bit more collaboration with some of the recommendations as it relates to law enforcement, some of the wording. In some of the recommendations, I'm happy to work with the prevention subcommittee, and specifically when it talks about removing problematic deputies who may not be violating policy at all. And remember that a lot of their efforts are directed by us and by their commanders, and frankly by the community. When we talk about traffic violations and different laws being broken, we are directed to those areas and to those issues by members from our own community. And specifically when one of the recommendations talk about traffic stops, remember that the report just came out today. We lead the nation, Metro Orlando, in pedestrian fatalities. So our enforcement and education of traffic violators must continue, but we realize that our policing must not be disproportionate. But please know that we receive hundreds, if not thousands, of complaints, and making it even safer here for all of our residents and visitors in Orange County. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Mina. And now, co-chair of the prosecution subcommittee, Bishop-elect McCray.
Thank you so much again, Co-Chair Love and Co-Chair Coffin as well, and definitely to our mayor. Thank you for assembling this team together as we come with a lot of collective ideas. A few years ago, I had a chance to speak at the Board of Commissions as we were relating to those empowerment zones. And I made an appeal that day, and the appeal was simply that as we move forward in this process, that we consider all parties involved, from large to small. And as we see this task force assembled, it comes from different offices, different positions, different functionalities within our community. And my hope, my desire is that as we move forward with the recommendations, that we don't forget the small men, that we make sure that we focus in on building and establishing a platform for those who have relationships already developed, as well as some of those who have mechanics and certain functionalities in place that can help us foster on a larger level, but definitely equal thought processes. The other thing that I see is that it seems today we're really talking in unity, and I pray that this is the constant conversation, that even in our passions, that we don't become provocative and begin to push people against people. After all, at the end of the day, we're still all human. As passionate as we may be, we must also be sensible and wise. There is an art to negotiation, and I think that's what we found within our committees. And we do ourselves a tremendous favor in understanding how to properly produce and present our cause and our effects that we desire to see within our communities. At the end of the day, I think everybody wants the same thing, and that is to make our communities a safe and better environment. Thank you again for allowing me to serve, and thank you to my task force team and also Co-Chair Bigham for everything that we've done together as well.
Thank you, Bishop. I'd like to recognize Task Force Member Eric DuBose.
To Mayor Demings, to Co-Chair Love, Co-Chair Coffin, and also to my co-chair, Lisa Early, and also Reverend Sangato. I have complete confidence that the ideas and recommendations that we presented, if carried out, they can impact this community in a positive manner. I have no doubt about that. Having been a law enforcement officer for 17 years and having the opportunity to serve and retire, this task force has allowed me to step out from behind the badge and to hear the heart's cry of the citizens of Orange County. And I must say it's been enlightening. But I so often say about the task force I've been talking, Rome was not built in a day, but it was worked on every day. So hopefully we can carry this out. And again, I'm with complete confidence. I know if we carry out these recommendations and tasks, we can impact the problem at hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'd like to recognize Deputy Chief of Police from Apopka, Jerome Miller.
Thank you very much, Mayor, co-chairs. I just appreciate the opportunity to sit here on this Citizen Safety Task Force. You know, it's not the first task force that I've sat on. I sat on many over my 25-year career, and you know, this time, you know, I can say that we truly and honestly assembled a first-round draft pick team here, and you know, sometimes we have these difficult conversations, and like we were talking about, you know, don't let our passion be mistaken for what we truly believe in. But hopefully we can carry out, you know, with these alternatives and options that's been presented here in this document before us. And as we carry on in our day-to-day responsibilities and duties, and when this is presented to the full council, where we go from here. And at the end of the day, our goal is to reduce the violent crime and gun violence here and make Orange County a safer place to live, work, and play.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Co-Chair Lisa Early.
Thank you for that. And I don't think I pressed my button to speak, but since you called me, I will. Thank you, everybody, especially. Thank you, Mayor Demings. It is a privilege to collaborate with you on this task force and give my time to it. And like everybody said here, we look forward to collaborating on future implementation. I know sometimes I'm just out there and I push things out there that sometimes people may take offense at. But I do want to say something to my colleague, Sheriff Mina. I had the privilege to work alongside Sheriff Mina when he was chief of police for many years. And what I remember most was him implementing positive changes in the Orlando Police Department. I remember President Obama's 21st Century Task Force on Policing, and City of Orlando was a key member of that. I think City of Orlando was one of the first police departments in the entire country to make a commitment to put body cameras on all their police officers when that was a major recommendation out of the task force. And also to set up a very robust data portal showing all arrests in Orange County broken out by race, gender, location, use of force. He had a very strong initiative on that. So I have so much faith in Sheriff Mina looking at best practices and implementing them in Orange County. And I would recommend to all of the other policing agencies in Orange County to see the work that Sheriff Mina has done, because it's really impressive, and I appreciate everything. And I know there have sometimes been cases of kids, and I could always call Sheriff Mina, and he always gave a fair and honest approach to everything and really cared. The only one thing that I would ask is that, you know, a recommendation coming out of the prevention subcommittee was to reduce disproportionate arrests, and I don't see in the law enforcement or in the enforcement committee conversation about how to do that, or how to take a good look at that and figure out strategically how you can begin to reduce disproportionate arrests, because particularly for low-level crimes, I'm telling you, kids in the well-off communities in Orange County do the same stupid things: loitering, going without a seatbelt, smoking marijuana, doing stupid things like that. So how do you begin to strategically look at how can we reduce the gap? But I'm here to always partner with you in everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next, Adam Hartnett.
Thank you. I'm greatly filled with gratitude to be a part of this process and this task force. I am not only filled with gratitude that I feel listened to and heard through this process, but that we were also able to incorporate the community's voice understand it and produce such great recommendations. I'm so proud to be a part of producing these recommendations. I would like to draw our attention to some of the statements in the vision that Rachel Allen put together, specifically that the social and fiscal stability of individuals living in specific zip codes and neighborhoods of Orange County is shaped by a long history of racism in laws, policies, and practices that has exacerbated inequality in education, employment, and economic opportunity, access to child care, mental and physical health, political power, and the systems of law and justice. And that being able to create a theory of change around reducing violent crime allows Orange County to transition from a culture of punishment to one of connection, moving from asking what's wrong with you to what happened to you, with compassion, empathy, and the will to act guiding us. I think these words are imperative moving forward. I think they shouldn't only guide us, they should be our unanimous cry. And I'd also like to read two of the recommendations that Lisa, our preventions co-chair, wasn't able to read due to timing. That's my bell. I'm going to read them anyways. Recommendation 4 is support economic development, reduce poverty, and address family economic insecurity. And recommendation number 5 was to reduce access to illegal firearms and specifically advocate alongside other municipalities and organizations to change legislation at the state level to create common sense gun legislation that will make everyone in our community safer. Thank you.
Task Force Member Roger Handberg, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking Mayor Demings for the honor of being on this task force. Like Deputy Chief Miller, I've been on other task force, but this was definitely a blue ribbon commission, so thank you very much for the honor. Thank you very much to our co-chairs, Love and Coffin, for their leadership and for the leadership of my co-chairs on the prosecution subcommittee, co-chairs Brigham and McCrae. This was a great experience for me. I had a lot of my assumptions challenged, and we had a lot of really difficult conversations. I think in the prosecution subcommittee, we've come up with some tangible things that I think are going to improve our community's ability as prosecutors and members of the community in general to deal and reduce with gun violence. So we're very excited to partner with the State Attorney's Office on the Geographic Stewards matter, and we're looking forward to implementing that shortly. I think Sheriff Mean has said a word that I think is really resonated with me, which was collaboration. The way this subcommittee or the way this committee is set up, we've been sort of siloed. We each have our own subcommittees. And I can tell from the 38-page document that I got yesterday, sometime around 1 o'clock, that there's been a lot of really excellent work. And each of the subcommittees has gone on a journey. But frankly, it's sometimes been a separate journey, and so it's been great to see the results as we've come together. And I don't know how we're going to vote as we move forward with proposed recommendations, but I'm hoping we can vote to recommend the ones from our particular subcommittee, because I've been moved very far in this process, but I don't know if I'm familiar enough with all of the different recommendations to support all of them without qualification at this point. So leave it to the lawyer and the last person to talk in the room to say something negative. But I can tell the passion of all the recommendations, and I think there's really a lot of great stuff in here. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Member Hamburg. At this time, I'd like to recognize the members that are on WebEx. The first one is Mr. Rolando Bailey. Mr. Bailey, you're recognized. Okay, I'd like to proceed forward and recognize Task Force Member Mr. T.J. Legacy Cole. Task Force Member T.J. Legacy Cole, you're recognized. You don't have we don't have sound. You need to unmute yourself. Okay, I'd like to proceed forward and recognize Task Force Member Samantha Love. Samantha Love, you're recognized. Okay, I'd like to see if T.J. Legacy Cole is with us. Task Force Member Cole. Last but not least, I'd like to recognize Task Force Member Ricky Lynn. See Ricky Lynn? Okay, I guess that will close out the open discussion session, and we wanted to proceed forward, and before my co-chair moves forward.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
TJ, you're recognized.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Member Cole, you're recognized.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
And we wanted to proceed forward before my co-chair moves forward. TJ, you're recognized. I'm here. Can you hear me? Yes, we can.
We're experiencing some technical difficulty. I don't know. Member Cole, are you there? My apologies.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to thank Mayor Demings for his for formulating this task force. I apologize if you can't hear me. I also want to thank Commissioner Victoria Siplin for appointing me to this committee as well. And also I want to thank all the chairs and the Orange County staff that assisted with this task force. It really was an eye-opening experience. I know as a grassroots community activist, a lot of times I used to hear about sitting at the table. You gotta be at the table. If you're not sitting at the table, well then you're on the menu. So this gave me an opportunity to have a front row seat as to how District 6 is actually depicted from various members of our community and even our local government. And I will say to this, I don't know, I'm disappointed that we didn't go far enough in a lot of the recommendations. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't see individual growth from members when it comes to the conversation of over-policing, when it comes to the conversation of economic justice within our community. I'm hoping that this task force is not the last time that people on the task force will get together and speak and advocate for these issues. Yes, there's a lag. Someone just gave me a thing. So yeah, I'm apologizing because there's a lag, and I'm sorry that you guys can't hear me. But I will say this: let's continue to work. I think James Baldwin once said that when is a good time for progress? How much time do you need? And I'm hoping that we can both. I'm hoping that we can continue forward. So I have more to say, but because of the technical issues, I'll just keep it brief and short, and I'll be available for comment later for any media outlets that have reached out to me already. Thank you.
Before I pass on to my co-chair, Mr. Mayor, I want to say to you, I sincerely appreciate you having the courage to move forward with this task force. I will also say to all of the task force members and the county staff that participated in this process, 120 days, 50 some odd meetings, the uncomfortable conversations that we had to have with one another. And Co-Chair Brigham, you mentioned something, Bishop Cabarrus mentioned it, and most of you heard Co-Chair and myself continue at times. These masks are used to protect us from this virus that's in the environment. But the other thing that I want let this mask do is shield me from supporting and also speaking up when we need to speak up. Sheriff Mina, I appreciate your engagement in this process relative to the recommendations. Mayor Demings, the charge that you gave us was to look at how we can reduce gun violence. I think we have a winning plan here. I have the confidence that this is going to proceed forward, and I believe Task Force Member Miles mentioned, let's hit the ground running. I can't let this mass cover for me as it relates to the mission that we were given. One of the items that we have in our recommendation as it relates to cash bail, I believe, and Bishop Cabrera said this excellently, where do we go from here? Let's not stop the work. One of the entities that I do believe cash bail needs to be referred to is the Criminal Justice Public Safety Council. This task force, Orange County, doesn't have the authority from a statutory perspective to make a decision on cash bail. We were given the charge as it relates to how do we reduce gun violence. I think the recommendations that we're hearing here today, we can hit the ground running. But I also want to be realistic about what we have control of. So with that, to my co-chair, I wanted to denote that as we proceed forward, because I believe in our recommendations, there's things that we can actually affect and look at the return on investment to Orange County. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to just take one moment to give a little more of a shout out to all of the county staff who worked with these subcommittees and who worked with the task force as a whole. We can't overstate the tremendous load that you carried and the amount of work you did and the gentleness that you had in dealing with us. And we appreciate it greatly. We're sorry where we made your work unnecessarily hard, but we really do appreciate it. And Mayor, you've appointed good people to work for you, and so we commend you for that, too. So thank you so much. And the time has come now for us to actually vote. And I'm certain that every person who served on this task force wishes that there were some things that were a little different, something that they would have liked to see included or emphasized more, or something that they would have liked to see toned down and emphasized less. But all of us look at it and we say, well, there are those little things we would do differently. But I think that we can take considerable satisfaction and gratification in the product that has been produced. And I believe it has tremendous potential. And so at this time, we'd like to open the floor for a motion to accept the collective reports of the subcommittees and any cover material that goes with it. And so the floor is open. If someone would like to move that, we would be happy to accept that motion. It's been so moved. Is there a second? It's been seconded. Now we are running out of time, but we do want to open the floor for discussion. If there are things that you haven't had opportunity to say in the subcommittee reports, or if there are things that you haven't had opportunity to say as we've talked to each task force member individually, we would open up for that comment now. We would ask you to keep it as succinct as possible. We don't care to drag the meeting out unnecessarily, but if there's something that you wouldn't be able to sleep with tonight if you didn't say, we want you to sleep tonight, so feel free to speak up.
Yeah, Co-Chair Love, if I may, or Coffin, I'm sorry. I alluded to before, but before I would be supportive of the recommendations for prevention subcommittee on recommendation 3B. I would just like to work with you just a little bit more on the wording of 3B, and I think we could come up with something together that would solve what we're trying to get at without that wording in there, and some of it's just problematic for me.
Co-Chair, I would ask if we can vote on the other recommendations separately, withdraw what Sheriff Mina just recommended, as well as, once again, I would like to refer the issue of cash bail to the Criminal Justice Public Safety Council.
Okay. Thank you very much. And so we will set that aside. We will vote on the rest of the document unless there are other issues similarly that there are reservations about, in which case we would set those aside as well and vote on the remainder. Is there any other thing that needs to be set aside? So what we are voting on here then is the document with two exceptions. One would be a matter of passing the recommendation to a different recipient group, and the other would be that we're looking at some wording. Is there any other thing? So those
What's the issue with 3B?
And the rest would be voted on here. And so I would just ask, is the one who made the motion willing to accept that?
The document.
Okay, is the second willing to accept that?
One would be a matter of
okay, in which case
passing the recommendation to a different recipient group.
If there is no more discussion,
can I ask a point of clarification, Co-Chair Coffin?
Yes.
There's a lot of great stuff in prevention recommendations. There's a lot of rhetoric and other stuff.
Willing to accept.
Do we have the ability to, if we want to, abstain? I'm not trying to. There's just so much in there, and there's so much history, and there's just so many details. Is that an option?
Yes, member, you can abstain.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to ask for a motion.
Okay.
Can I just get some clarification? So if we vote on the overall report, some people will abstain, but if we vote on the overall report, then are we pulling out those two items, and how are we going to reword them, or what's the process for rewording them and then reincorporating the reworded sections back in the document?
Okay, we will, as soon as we voted this, we will come back to that immediately.
Okay.
And first we'll take the idea of the redirection, and then we'll look at rewording and see if we can sort that out before we can complete this meeting today. So any other areas of clarification that are needed? Okay, if not, then we will vote, and all in favor of passing on this collective recommendation with the two exceptions that we've talked about, all in favor of passing that on to the mayor and the Orange County Board of Commissioners, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Okay, then that's carried. Thank you very much, and now we'll move forward.
Sorry, one abstention.
Okay, and we need to recognize those who abstained. So please, if you abstained, please raise your hand. Okay. Okay. Okay, those are noted. Thank you. And now we'll move on to dealing with the issue of cash bail, and I'll turn that back to my co-chair.
Yes, I'm making the recommendation and for the issue of cash bail to be redirected to the Criminal Justice Public Safety Coordinating Council, the council that seats the public defender. The courts are participatory in that process. Law enforcement is participant in that process. That's where we can actually get some data, some research and information. We did not get research that directly correlates cash bail reducing gun violence. And so I believe that coordinating council would be the best place for us to affect change if that's where we need the impact. And that's my recommendation.
I have a question. Would that then be a rewording of that paragraph to say that, or are you suggesting that the paragraph be stripped entirely from the document?
Mr. Chair, I wanted to just jump in. By
Florida law, each county is required to have a criminal justice public safety coordinating council. And that council consists of officers of the court, and there are other stakeholders that are participant in that, including representatives from the surety bond, the bail bond industry. They are all there, and it is likely because of some statutory issues here, the chief judge, the state attorney, the public defender, law enforcement representatives, probation, corrections, they're all part of that, and I believe that that perhaps is the most appropriate entity for our county within the 9th Judicial Circuit to address that issue. And so under the purview of the Board of County Commission, we do not have the authority to unilaterally change that. So it has to go through that particular council. As I see it, it's better suited to have the kind of discourse to be able to effect that. So what I'm saying to you is that it is my understanding and my commitment that if you make the recommendation to forward that on to the Criminal Justice Public Safety Coordinating Council here in Orange County for consideration, that is what we will do from a county perspective. In terms of process, what happens from here is that on April 13th, your co-chairs will come before the Board of County Commission and will present the recommendations of this collective body, and presumably the board will accept the recommendations, and those things that perhaps will require additional follow-up legislatively through the coordinating council, et cetera, we will endeavor to do that. And by way of process, while the formal task force will not continue to meet, I do believe that we have to have an accountability piece in place so that at some point in the future, we will come back, there will be a document that will be produced that will be placed on our website at the county that will be used as a guide by which to hold myself, the county commissioners accountable, as well as the other agencies and organizations that are representative here on this body, accountable to what was recommended. So at some point, I will reconstitute or reschedule a meeting into the future to come back so that we can report back to you on the progress that we're making towards those things that you have recommended. Of course, the Board of County Commission has approved $2 million in allocation that will be used to meet the anticipated recommendations as a start. This is just a start, a beginning. This is not the end of the process. This is the beginning, really, of that transitional process that will occur. And so I want you to understand that it will require follow-up and review in the future to make sure that the document that is ultimately produced is followed into the future. What I think the co-chairs are attempting to do here today is to remove pieces of it that we have no control over. We want to be able to control those things and perform and meet the recommendations by which you have brought forward. In terms of the language that if Sheriff Mina has some alternative language that perhaps he can offer today, if he's not prepared to do that today, that is something that perhaps between now and the formal acceptance at the Board of County Commission, we may be able to work that out. But remember, this is the final meeting of the task force prior to the presentations or the recommendations going to the board. So to the extent that you can, you want to work out those things that you intend to recommend to the board today.
Co-Chair Early, based on and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that explanation. Based on that, I would recommend that is encompassed in the recommendation as a referral from Orange County to the Criminal Justice Public Safety Coordinating Council.
Thank you for that. And just two things on that. So then in the future, as the county reports on progress, would they then check in with that group to see what progress they've made in that regard? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is there were several members of my committee who were very strong advocates for that language, so I think they should have an opportunity to speak now as well. If anybody wants to, if they want to.
Any members would like to be recognized from the Prevention Committee? From the Prevention Committee, any members? Okay.
So there being none, that would be an acceptable compromise to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Love.
You're recognized.
So I'm good with our recommendations from the prosecution subcommittee as a whole. Reviewing this document, this was sent out to us around 11 o'clock today with, I guess, just some grammar and sentence structure. I'm not 100% sure because I don't have the comparative document for me, but I believe in the revision that certain bullet points might have been left out in error. So if I vote to approve this, can those revisions be made? It's not changing the recommendation, but like I said, there were certain points in there that I think are missing, but I can't find the document to check to see. Like, so how would we address those?
Staff will address those items, task force member. Staff will get with staff and we'll go ahead and make those amendments.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, also to proceed forward to vote on the recommendation that was just made, the exchange between Co-Chair Early and myself, I think we need to address those separately. So, Co-Chair, if you don't have a problem, let's just vote on that specific issue relative to cash bail.
Yes. And the clarification is then we're redirecting that. Is that?
It will still be included in the recommendation, but it will be for Orange County to refer it to the Criminal Justice Public Safety Coordinating Council.
Okay. And
I move that change.
Okay, that change has been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second that
It's
change.
been seconded. And any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Co-Chair, before we do that, can we just give a second for WebEx if there's anybody on WebEx that wants to comment?
Okay.
It just takes a moment with the delay.
Okay. So WebEx, anyone on WebEx who would like to comment?
Vote to approve this, can those revisions be made? It's not changing the recommendation, but like I said, there were certain points in there that I think are missing, but I can't find the document to check to see, like, how address those.
Staff will address those items, Co-Chair. Task force member. Staff will get with staff and we'll
I
go ahead.
think that's the delay that we're experiencing.
Okay,
so I see Member Cole on the screen. If he can hear me and he's
Okay, Member Cole or anyone else, do you wish to address the motion that's just been moved and seconded? Okay, do we have any communication with WebEx? I think we will go ahead and vote. We don't know how soon that might be sorted out. So the suggestion has been moved and seconded. So all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Okay, and any abstainers, please raise your hand. Okay, that is carried.
Moving forward to the last item that we pulled out separately, and that was the language issue. Mr. Mayor, I concur with you. If Sheriff Mina is not prepared at this point in time, I'd like to ask staff, how would we proceed forward if we get that language subsequently after this meeting?
Yeah, I don't have language right now, but I'd like to work on some.
Thank you, Co-Chair Love and Sheriff Mina. Sheriff, if you can present the language and email that to me, then I could work with our prevention members, so they would have an opportunity to review the language, and then they could just go between myself as we find something that's agreeable to both parties.
Okay.
And then once that's approved, we will update the document along with Mr. Scott's omissions that we left out, and then resend that back out to everyone.
And that would go to everyone.
Yes.
For final approval.
That's correct.
Okay, so we would still have opportunity to approve or not the amended language. And so would someone like to move that we follow that Sheriff Mina will work on language, and that will be submitted, and ultimately will get back to all of us, and we can vote on that specific language at that time.
Chair, I just want to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a conundrum there because of the Sunshine Law. Anything that is the formal business of the task force has to be done in the sunshine. And with this being the final meeting, I'm not sure how you would be able to include any subsequent wording into the document. Now, what you may be able to do is, if there's language that is worked out subsequent to today, when you present to the Board of County Commission, you may recommend that be included by the board, because the board will be meeting in the sunshine at that time. But in terms of this task force, I don't think that you could effectively vote on approval outside of the sunshine, because this is the final meeting. So
that being said,
there are lawyers in the room, but I've dealt with the Sunshine Law for a lot of years now, so I believe that that's the challenge that you'll have.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you've placed us in a position where we have to do some of the heavy lifting, and one of the things that I'd like to place for a motion is the fact that our charge was to reduce gun violence. The recommendation is specific to over-policing or traffic stops, I believe. And so I'd like to make the motion that we withdraw that, because you are correct, this is our final meeting. Unless there is a direct correlation that somebody can articulate relative to traffic stops and reduction of gun violence, now is the time to articulate it.
Can I be recognized?
You're recognized.
I don't know if we want to reopen this conversation, because we had a very robust conversation about this, but kids don't start shooting other kids without all kinds of prior stuff happening in their lives. I think we addressed some of that in our report. But if I can follow up with what Mayor Deming says, perhaps the best way to handle this then, and to deal with the sunshine issues, is to follow the process that Carol said, but not make, so in other words, we agree on what the alternative language would be, but it not be incorporated into the final report until it goes before the county commission, at which point that recommendation is made to switch out the language that's currently in there with the language that we will work out. And so then that change is made in the sunshine. But I don't want to reopen a debate about, what leads kids into a life of violence. And, only one piece of it is being arrested for low-level crimes. I mean, we have a whole piece in there about poverty, the impact of poverty. There are a lot of things, the lack of programming for youth. There are a lot of different things. This is just one. So I didn't want to reopen that, but would that be acceptable, do you think, Mayor, if we work it out, the language, the revised language, the way that Carol said, but not actually incorporate the change until it goes to the county commission?
Again, keep in mind that if you do not formally vote on language today, what you will simply be doing, what if the chairs advance the some type of consensus language, the chairs would simply present that language to the board, but it would be the board's purview at that point whether to accept it or not accept it. It will not be part of your formal recommendations.
May I be recognized?
Yes, you're recognized.
Thank you. Co-Chair Love, I'd like to speak to what you were saying about how we have been gathered to work to reduce gun violence and try to come up with ways to do that. And I know in the prosecution subcommittee there were several discussions about systemic racism or unconscious racial bias where, for example, a young person may be riding his or her bike down the street, and maybe this is a person of color, and a law enforcement officer, there's a taillight out on the bike. So the law enforcement officer cautions or approaches this young person, and the young person immediately gets defensive because maybe there's been some prior interactions with someone who is a white law enforcement officer, and it quickly escalates from there to a situation where it could result in violence. So that is something that when we were having our discussions, we were talking about how to de-escalate and how to try to educate about this sort of subconscious bias or unconscious bias that when stopping someone for speeding or stopping a bicyclist for having a light out could lead to gun violence. So I'm just suggesting that that language may not necessarily need to be removed because it could be a part of the whole picture. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Co-Chair, if I could, I don't have language in front of me, but I do believe that the reason we are here, the reason that the mayor formed this committee was because of the targeted gang violence that we are experiencing, and not different items revolving around criminal justice reform. And I do understand the recommendation that the committee was trying to make, but I do think that I would submit a motion, as Co-Chair Love mentioned, to remove 3B, and that's something that we can, as law enforcement agencies, we're doing all different things in the community. For over 2 years now, I've been listening to our community members about different things we could do as far as criminal justice reform. Many of those things have already been implemented. So maybe that's not the proper, or this task force that was formed for gun violence, for gang violence, maybe is not the proper forum for this recommendation per se, like I said, as worded, because I do have problems with the wording. So I would make a motion to remove this with the promise that I will work with all of you as it relates to disproportionate treatment and disproportionate arrests, especially in those targeted zip codes.
Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Motion made. We have a second. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we have a show of hands? All in favor? Any opposed? 1, 2, Can't see all around the room, do we? We have 4 opposed. Can I see the show of hands for support of the motion? 1, 2, 3. The motion carries.
Do we have votes from the people on the WebEx?
We're having some difficulty with WebEx, so we are responding to them in chat. So if you can just give us another second and see if I can get a result. I've also asked them to email me if that's quicker.
The motion was made. We have the second, and it was approved.
And there aren't enough votes that could come in from WebEx to change it. And so while it might be good to record that vote, it won't change the outcome.
We're at the portion of the meeting where this has been tough. Everybody, this has been tough for us all. But progress, I'm confident, has been made and will continue to be made. Mayor Demings, just my closing remarks to you. Thank you for this, and to say a challenging opportunity is an understatement. But thank you for having the courage to assemble the task force members that came from every walk of life. And I will say, this was a great challenge, but the community will benefit from it. Thank you.
And I would just like to say amen, ditto, or hear, hear to that. And thanks to all of you, because it has been a very inspirational experience. And I hope that it makes a change in our community. Thank you so much.
Mayor Demings, we'll leave you with the last word.
Let me just say again, many of you in this room are unsung heroes, and we don't recognize you nearly enough for the work that you do in this community, oftentimes without any type of compensation. So we do appreciate you. Let me also just acknowledge our staff who did a yeoman's job. The staff will have the burden of making certain that we redact everything that has been said or done into writing, and that we follow up over time with your recommendations that ultimately, I believe, will be accepted by the Board of County Commission. Let me say to the state attorney, the fact that a state attorney who represents 2 counties, represents the 9th Judicial Circuit, took time out of her busy schedule, being new to office, is just nothing short of remarkable that she spent time here. That demonstrates, I think, her commitment to our community. To Sheriff Mina, again, he took time out of his busy schedule. Oftentimes I saw him here. If he could not be here, he had a senior member of his agency here. The various police departments had their chiefs of police here at various times. If they could not be here, the senior leadership of their agency was representative. And to all of those other agencies that came in and presented to you, they did a yeoman's job. But I do believe that sometimes there were comments made that appeared to be geographical in nature. And from the beginning, we said that we would not single out any particular geographical area. This is really about the countywide, inclusive of our municipalities, what we're trying to do here throughout Orange County. And I will tell all of you that in spite of all the work that you've done today, you didn't have all of the answers. You didn't have all of the solutions. And I believe that's okay, because the work that was done was comprehensive enough that it can begin to be a significant change for our community. Just to summarize in terms of next steps, your co-chairs will present to the Board of County Commission on April the 13th. Some of the items will be referred to the Criminal Justice Public Safety Coordinating Council here in Orange for their consideration. That's a separate process. From here, we will review. As I said, it is not over with today's action. There's still much accountability that has to occur in order for us to reach the desired outcomes that you all expect. The $2 million seed money that we are putting and investing into this is on top of the other work, the other budgetary items that we already have, trying to move the needle. As the outcomes are measured, it will give us the data and by which we can perhaps move forward to expand to other areas. So the last thing that I would say to all of you again is thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of our Board of County Commission and as a resident of this community for your tireless efforts. We are indeed stronger when we are intertwined in the moral fabric of our community. There will come a time when there are going to be some things that will unravel the fabric of our community. But what will keep us from getting ripped apart is to remember and to respect one another as we stay engaged to do better for all people. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Hey, the Orange County Citizen Safety Task Force is adjourned. Thank you.